Hi everyone, welcome back to our unit on cinematography. Today we're going to be talking about camera angle. One of the other decisions that the director of photography has to make is where to place the camera vertically. Should the camera be looking down on the characters or looking up at the characters, or should there be some other kind of angle there? And again, this is a decision that's made based on the story and the scene in question. What's the scene about? What's the emotional subtext of that scene? What's the tone of the scene? And how can they use the camera angle to evoke that? Here is the vocabulary for this particular lesson. So go ahead and pause and write these down. Again, give yourself some space on the page to write not just definitions, but also information about how and why these different angles are used. One of the terms you're going to hear in this lesson and the next lesson is the word motivated camera angles and motivated camera movements. And what we mean by that is, again, when a cinematographer is deciding when to use these particular techniques, they look to the story and they think about what's going on in the story and in that scene, and that's what motivates their decisions. The only term that's not going to be covered in this video lecture is the Dutch angle or the canted angle. That's why it has a little star there. That's going to be covered in a different video. Let's start with the low angle. So typically, I think when we use our camera phones or the camera feature on our phones to take videos, we are usually holding it up to our eyes. And so oftentimes when we're standing, the camera is going to be either looking down on something or maybe just looking straight ahead at eye level with another person or with a subject. So if we were doing a low angle shot on our cameras, on our phones, we would probably be crouching down and then tilting the camera up to look up at the characters or the subject matter. So a low angle shot is when the camera is positioned vertically below eye level and then kind of tilted up, usually just tilted up, looking up at the actors. Now here's why this is important. This can have a number of uses, but oftentimes it is used to make the characters appear more powerful, or to evoke maybe the power that they've gained in that scene. It could make them appear more dominant or more menacing. Case in point here would be this scene from The Dark Knight. Now, even though this shot is sometimes called our hero shot, this would not be a shot of the hero. This is the villain, the Joker. This is when he kind of gains the upper hand in the film. He gains the upper hand over Batman, who has chased him and has crashed his motorcycle and is literally lying on the ground. And so the Joker here has gained a more powerful position, a more dominant position. And so we see the camera now framing him from a low angle. I'm just going to share this video with you guys. This, I think, is just another great example of the use of the low angle. It's slightly more subtle, but there's a voiceover explanation here that I'll just let speak for itself.
Direction in cinema is often a matter of deciding where and how to place a camera in an individual scene. Here's a good example from John Huston's Maltese Falcon. Notice how each time we cut to Sidney Greenstreet, Huston chose to depict him in a low-angle shot, looking up at him, not only emphasizing his enormous physical frame, but in a certain way his power. He really dominates the frame. Each time Huston wants to shoot Humphrey Bogart, he'll always shoot Humphrey Bogart from eye level, implying in a certain way his stature or perhaps his power within the scene. Indeed, the unequal way that they're filmed within the scene implies, in fact, their unequal relationship in this particular negotiation.
I don't trust a man who says he's not.
Okay. So I know I said that typically this low angle shot is used to convey power on the characters, or to show, or to represent the character's power, their dominance. Sometimes it could be used ironically in that way. Here's an interesting case in point. This is a very famous shot from a very famous film, Citizen Kane. And just kind of a brief background on this film here. So the main character, Charles Foster Kane, he's here on the right, played by Orson Welles. He is for the better part of the film, he is a very rich and very powerful figure. He controls I think the biggest media empire in the United States. He's one of the wealthiest men. Lives in this huge mansion on huge property, etc., etc. At any rate, at this point in the film, he has decided to run for political office, as a lot of wealthy, powerful people tend to do. He's run for political office, but he was involved in a scandal, and because of that, he loses the election. And this is a scene that takes place just after he has lost the election. And you would think that somebody who is very powerful and expected to win political office like that, you'd think that for losing it, or when they lose it, they would feel less powerful. They would be diminished in some way. But Orson Welles, who plays Charles Foster Kane, and who also directed the film, he decided to shoot this scene in one of the most extreme low angles in cinema. He actually had to remove the floorboards from the floor to put the camera down low enough to get this extreme low angle. So I'll just play this for a little bit so you can see it, and then and I'll talk about it.
You don't care about anything except you. You just want to persuade people that you love them so much that they ought to love you back. Only you want love on your own terms.
Here he is talking with his old friend and an employee, actually. He's a reporter in his newspaper.
Charlie, I want you to let me work on the Chicago paper.
And he's asking him to transfer him to Chicago. So he's become really disillusioned with Kane and all the power that he's been seeking.
I want to go to Chicago. You're too valuable here.
So even though Kane has essentially lost some amount of his power and influence by losing the election, he still imagines himself as, or wants to see himself as, a very powerful figure. And so I think, my reading of this is that Welles is using the extreme low angle here to show us not how much power he actually has, but how much power he wants to have, how much power and influence he believes he has, which isn't very much. Okay. On to the next one, the high angle. So if the low angle is positioned below eye level, the high angle is the opposite. It's when the camera is positioned above eye level, looking down on the characters. And this can have oftentimes the opposite effect of the low angle. So the high angle can make the characters seem threatened, as we see here with Harry Potter. Can make them seem more vulnerable. It can actually diminish the power that a character might have. It can also suggest surveillance, being watched, as we see with the Truman Show. If you haven't seen this film, you should definitely see it. But basically, the main character Truman is, for his whole life, he has been the subject of a reality show, and he doesn't know it. And so he's being watched, literally being watched by all of America. And so we get a lot of these interesting different camera angles, because cameras are just hidden throughout his world, and some of those are high angles, and so we can we're kind of watching him, which also drains a little bit of his power, as a person too, because his life is essentially completely controlled by this TV show. The high angle can also convey a sense of hope, as we see here in The Great Gatsby, or that famous scene, which also is an example of camera movement from The Shawshank Redemption, where Andy Dufresne finally escapes from prison, and it's at night in the rainstorm, and the camera kind of pulls up away from him as he's looking up to the sky, and the lightning's flashing and so forth. And so that camera, the high angle there can, especially if the character's looking up, can kind of emphasize their hopefulness. Back to The Dark Knight. This is a high angle on the Joker, and of course this is where the Joker is caught. He's in jail. He's about to be interrogated by Batman, and the camera's kind of looking down on him. So in a way, he's lost his power, even though he has kind of set this whole thing up so that he's put in jail. He wants to be here. He's been caught. He's been apprehended. So he's no longer roaming the streets. So we get a little high angle looking down on him. Aerial shot. So this is, you might think of this as a version of the high angle, but this isn't just the camera kind of positioned above eye level. This is where the camera is directly above, looking straight down on the characters. And this can be used for a number of different effects. One, it helps to isolate characters. In this scene from Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, it just kind of helps to isolate both of our main characters here who are in love. Here's another example from Kill Bill Volume 1. This has the partial effect of isolating the main character here in yellow, but also it helps to put her in context, helps to show her in her surroundings, which of course is being literally surrounded by the Yakuza. And this is right before a very stylish scene where she essentially kills all these guys. And one other use of this aerial shot is to just kind of show characters again in context, in relation to their setting. Let's talk about a couple of other camera positions here. Ground level. Now this isn't necessarily a technical term. Any time you position the camera vertically, you're changing the angle basically. But ground level happens frequently enough. I think it's worth talking about. If you ever see any Coen Brothers movies, you're going to see this one a lot. They, for some reason, love to use ground level shots. In this one, No Country for Old Men, it's used purposefully to give us some interesting plot details and also help build character. Here is our antagonist of the film, not wearing any shoes, and I'm not going to go into that just now. But you should, if you see the movie, you'll understand what's going on with that motif. This is a technical term that is definitely worth knowing. Eye level. Eye level, again, it's imagine taking photos or videos with your camera. You're standing up, you're taking a picture of your friend, they're standing up, you're holding the camera up at your own eyes and it's level with their eyes. Okay, so that would be eye level. This is where the camera views a character from their own eye level, kind of looking straight ahead at them. Another way of understanding eye level is if you've got two characters in the frame, two or more characters in the frame, and their eyes are level. This is kind of the most natural position for the viewer, and because of that, there's a sense of stability. Okay? If I'm looking up at something, if we're looking down at something, that's not necessarily a natural viewpoint. And so anytime we change that natural viewpoint, we call attention to something else going on. We say that, there's been some kind of change from the norm, right? Either some character has gotten more powerful or less powerful. There's a threat, something like that. But when we return the camera to eye level, that's when things feel good. They feel normal. It's as if the status quo is kind of has been restored, right? Order and balance have been restored. So eye level is usually used when there's a balance of power, when two characters are kind of equally powerful, or oftentimes in love scenes. It can show equality or partnership, companionship between characters. I'm going to play this clip from The Dark Knight because here's a really interesting use of the eye level. Of course, as I mentioned before, the Joker is captured. He wants to be captured, and this is the famous interrogation scene.
Good cop, bad cop routine.
So Gordon leaves the room, turns on the lights, and there is Batman standing behind him. Now, when we first see Batman, Batman's standing above him, and here is...
Never start with the head. The victim gets all fuzzy. He can't feel the neck.
This is an unequal power dynamic. Batman is more powerful than him, hence the high angle and low angle. But now look what happens. Now they're at eye level.
I wanted to see what you'd do.
And until Batman reaches across the table and grabs him and starts fighting him, this conversation is shot entirely at eye level.
You let Dent take your place. Even to a guy like me, that's cold. Where's Dent? Those mob fools want you gone so they can get back to the way things were. But I know the truth. There's no going back.
So I think if I had to kind of summarize or give my interpretation of this scene here, I would say that
Kill you?
the film is using eye level here to show that these characters are kind of like yin and yang. They are two equally opposing forces that, and because of that, they kind of are equally powerful. We have our hero and our villain, the arch nemesis, and they both kind of complete one another, as it were. So they're equals in that sense. Okay, next term would be the point of view shot. This isn't necessarily a camera angle. I just didn't know what other category it would fall under, but the point of view shot is where the camera is almost the camera kind of takes the place of a character's view, a character's point of view. And so we are seeing what a character in the film sees. Okay, so up here we've got a great example from the Hitchcock film Rear Window, about a man who, because he's broken his leg, he's confined to his house, and he starts to spy on his neighbors across the way with his camera. And then he spies on one particular neighbor and thinks that he's involved in a murder. And so we see a lot of shots of that neighbor through what is supposed to be his camera lens, the character's camera lens, which of course is the film's camera lens. But the suggestion is that we're seeing things through that character's eyes. Same here with American Sniper. The effect here is that we're looking through a scope on a high-powered rifle, so we're getting the perspective of the sniper character. This is used for a lot of reasons. One, kind of general use, is it kind of immerses us in the action and immerses us in the subjective viewpoint of that character. We are looking through their eyes. Another example of that here from Inglourious Basterds. This would also be a high angle shot, a high angle point of view shot. Two heroes here have pinned down a Nazi officer and are about to, or it just looks like a little blood on the tip of the knife there. It looks like they've just done some damage to him, and so they clearly have the upper hand in this point of view high angle shot. Okay. Just a quick review, talking about camera angles. Camera angles can do a number of things. They can change the tone of a shot, or they can show us the way that the tone of a story is changing within that scene. They can evoke characters' psychological states, particularly with the Dutch or canted angle, which can also help disorient or disturb audiences. Again, you'll see this in the next video. They can also reveal a balance or an imbalance of power. that high angle and low angle shot, or the eye level shot. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Don't forget to watch the next video about canted angles or Dutch angles. And then in our next lesson, we're going to be talking about camera movements and motivated camera movements. Why cinematographers and directors decide to move the camera, and what are the different types of movements, and what sorts of ideas or emotions or things are they associated with. So we'll see you next time.